think the best way to sum up them culturally, how they are personally, I heard more than one Latvian describe themselves as cold-blooded, which sounds a bit scary. It is kind of intimidating at first because they are very reserved. They're more standoffish. They're not what we would consider warm and open and welcoming from the get-go. They kind of have a tough outer shell. And so, for example, you could get on a bus and it'll be completely silent because they're not speaking to each other. You don't talk to people that you don't know. So often when I would say hello to someone and greet them, the response was, "Do I know you? Like, why are you talking to me?" And when I would say, "Oh, I'm just, starting conversation or being friendly," or "I have a question about the language," they would be like, "You're not supposed to talk to people that you don't know, right? That's kind of weird." That wasn't always the response, but you'll get that often. However, once they get some time to warm up to you, they're so loving and they're very sincere. That's kind of the flip side of that very reserved nature, is that they mean what they say. They don't have very flowery language. I was speaking to a member who said that Americans a lot of times speak through flowers, kind of our way of saying we beat around the bush a lot. They're very straightforward. If they see that you're gaining weight, they might tell you. And if they see that you're losing weight, they'll tell you, things like that. And it's not offensive for them. They're honest, and they're very clear about what they mean. But again, they're very sincere. And so it's odd to them oftentimes that they hear Americans say, "I love you, I love you." And to them, that's not something that you say unless you feel as if you're family. That's the most you could ever express to a person. So it's not thrown around a lot the way that Americans throw it around. They very much mean that if they say it. And if you say it to them, you had better mean it, because that's a friendship that you're going to have for the rest of your life, because they're that loyal and dedicated to their friends. Just not from the get-go, and not to people that they don't know, which is pretty understandable considering their history. Sweden, Germany, and Russia have been invading and ruling parts, if not all, of Latvia for centuries. It didn't start with the Soviet Union, 60, 70 years ago. It's been going on for centuries, and they've had spurts of independence only to be taken over again. And so I think perhaps it comes a little bit from that. But the younger generation understands American culture a little better, but they're still more reserved than most Americans would be. For example, over the phone, when you're talking to people on the phone, and they'll pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, listening," because they're just like, "You called me, there's obvious a reason." You don't need to go through the whole like, "Hey, how are you doing? What's going on?" Because to them, they're just like, "Why are you doing this? Like, do you really want to know how I'm doing?" Because they would tell you. If you ask that question, you should want to know the answer. So it might feel offensive at first when they're just like, "Hey," it's like, "Yeah, I'm listening. What do you want?" They're not being rude. It's just, there's obviously a point to this conversation. Let's get to it. There's some superstitious things that even a lot of them don't necessarily believe or take a whole lot of stock in, but they still follow them. Whistling inside is something to avoid. Which was a little hard for me because I'm kind of a whistler. And then coming home from the mission, it took me about 9 months to feel comfortable whistling in a building, but that's kind of one. They don't shake hands over a threshold. You're not supposed to cross arms, like if there's more than one person shaking hands. Like if you've got two people here, you don't really reach over. Sitting on a corner, so if you've got a square table and sometimes there's not a lot of room, so you'll sit on the corner, that's considered bad luck. So and a huge one is what's called the Zaurvesh, which is the through wind, the crosswind. That's when you have one door open on one side of the house and maybe a window open on the other, and the wind crosses through. That is something that a lot of them still very much believe in, and is considered bad luck and bad for your health. So, I mean, you're fine if you're in your apartment. We did it during the summer all the time. But if you're on a bus and it's middle of the summer, it's really hot, they're only going to have windows open on one side of the bus. They don't really, it won't cross. Or if you're in someone's apartment, don't expect them to open up two windows on opposite sides. Those were just a couple of things that I didn't realize. And then, of course, yeah, just the bluntness wasn't something that I was used to. But that's why it's kind of refreshing once you understand that it's okay for you to be blunt with them. They respect that when you get to the point. You're not trying to beat around the bush. You're letting them know, this is what I want to talk to you about. This is the reason I'm addressing you. You won't be offensive to them. So that was something I think I was timid about at first, was being straight with them. But eventually you'll get used to that, and it's all right to just get to the point.